So first of all, I want to welcome you all here this morning. And before I ask Bobby to say his few words, I do think it's important for all of us to remember that the initial catalyst for this crisis was the murder of two men, Jack Davison and Kevin McGuinness. But it's also a fact that all the twists and turns and manoeuvrings of the last few weeks are entirely down to the rivalry between the UUP and the DUP, and it's a matter of some wonderment how we end up in a situation where those two murders should have been left entirely with the law agencies, were brought into the political institutions where they didn't belong. The arrest of Bobby Storey became the pretext for really ridiculous manoeuvres as one party in unionism tried to outdo the other party in unionism. Now, there are also other big issues in the mix, and these are big issues as well. But the issue of the lack of a workable budget, the outstanding matters which go back to the Good Friday Agreement and other agreements, including Act McGill, the failure as we approach Christmas again to implement the Stormont House Agreement. Talks will commence on Monday, tomorrow. Sinn Féin will be there. Notwithstanding all that has happened, we will enter those talks led by Mark McGuinness in good faith. We are determined to find solutions to these problems. We are problem solvers. We are clearly agents of change. So we have set out our agenda, and it is that which is set out in the Stormont House Agreement and in the Good Friday Agreements and in all of the other agreements in between. But what we will not do is to tolerate or acquiesce to any possible situation where those who vote for Sinn Féin would be expected to be treated differently, that their rights need to be recognised and respected on exactly the same basis, no more or no less, than the rights of every other citizen. I also want to make the point in relation to the Taoiseach that the Taoiseach needs to make the North a priority. Notwithstanding the work of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, both the Prime Minister in England and the Taoiseach have become detached from this process, have virtually abandoned their responsibilities as co-equal guarantors of agreements and of institutions and of protocols that have been set out in international agreements and voted for by the people across this island. And clumsy interventions, as we've seen in the last week at the time of crisis, are no substitute for the type of strategic consistency and ongoing engagement between the two principles that is required. And of course, the parties here in the North have the bulk of the work to do. But the Minister of Foreign Affairs has pointed out, and I agree with him entirely, that the North is a special case. Partition itself is at the cause of all of this, in my opinion and Sinn Féin's opinion. But given the decades of discrimination, of disadvantage, given that we're a society coming out of conflict, attempts by a Tory government in London to impose its own right-wing agenda, to deny people here their rights, to expect an executive to be sustainable when it doesn't have a workable budget. These are all matters that are up to the Taoiseach to, on an ongoing way, persuade the British Prime Minister on. So too with the Stormont House Agreement, so too with outstanding matters from the Good Friday Agreement. So there's a huge job of work for us to do, of course, but there's also a huge job of work for the two governments and all the other parties to do. So I just want to invite Bobby then to say whatever he has to say, and we'll throw it over to yourselves.
Okay, thank you. I want to refer to a short statement first of all. and then I'll speak sort of further on that. Before I start, I'm very mindful of the fact that there are two grieving families, Jack Davison's family and Kevin McGuinn's family, out there who absolutely deserve justice, and my wholehearted sympathy goes out to both the families. The people who murdered both men are criminals and the enemies of the Sinn Féin peace strategy. And every effort must be made to ensure that these criminals are brought before the courts and that they are open to due process. I repeat again the call of my party leaders and party colleagues that anybody who has any information about the guilty parties, the murderers who carried out these killings, should go to the PSNI. The only way to deal with such murders on our streets is through the criminal justice system. I absolutely reject the attempts of the unionist parties to cynically use these murders and my wrongful detention to threaten the political institutions. As the 6th County Chair of Sinn Féin, I have contributed to the development of Sinn Féin policy in support of an accountable police service and of working political institutions. My commitment to that remains resolute, and neither I nor Sinn Féin will be deterred by the actions of criminals. The PSNI had no basis for arresting me on any grounds. At no time during my detention did the police present a shred of evidence, a shred of intelligence, which in either my opinion or in the opinion of my legal representative warranted my arrest. Questions must be asked also about the timing, not only the nature of my wrongful arrest. I will be raising these matters through the accountability mechanisms that thankfully my party and I and others worked hard in the past to put in place. I have also instructed my legal representative, John Finucane, to take legal proceedings against the Chief Constable. I also want to make a couple of points about the media coverage and the political fallout arising out of my arrest. My party and I have been subjected to trial by media, by sections of the media. The presumption of innocence was set aside, and accusations and allegations against me were carried on the media as if they were fact, as if they had a basis in fact. And it appears that sort of for some journalists, a briefing from anonymous figures within the PSNI or the British Security Services is to be taken as a fact. After 40 years of clear evidence of censorship, media manipulation, dirty tricks, collusion, the use of agents and informers, and the murder of citizens, the willingness of some within the media to set aside due process is unacceptable. The behaviour of the unionist parties, who have cynically used my arrest to pull down the political institutions, have been nothing short of a disgrace. They have succeeded only in holding the political process to ransom and providing encouragement to the dissident elements and also to the criminals who murdered Jack Davison and Kevin McGuinness. Neither I, and certainly Sinn Féin, will allow criminals to win. I will continue to play a constructive role in the time ahead in defending the peace process against the actions of those who seek to drag us back to the past. Thank you.
Okay, folks, over to yourselves now.
Mr. Adams, do you hold the Chief Constable responsible for the political fallout last week after Mr. Storey's arrest?
Well, I will go no further than to say at this time that I have grave concerns about how all of this has developed. But of course, the PSNI have a job to do. There are accountability mechanisms to make sure they do that job within the protocols and within the law, we will pursue that. But that should be left to them. See, the big mistake, if mistake it was to bring all of us into the political institutions. No. And that probably harks back to the time when the unionists had control of everything here. Those days are gone. So whatever problems have been caused, first of all, it starts with the murder of these two men. We'll deal with that within the policing dispensation. The job of the politicians is to make sure that we do the job that we're paid for. We're not paid to dance the hokey pokey on the back of grave issues like this. There are huge challenges in terms of getting a working budget. There are huge challenges ensuring that those who will be discommoded and disadvantaged, that is the poor people out there, children with severe disabilities, those who depend on public services, if the politicians don't get their act together. So we separate out the two issues, and Bobby has made it clear that he will pursue this on the one hand through his legal representative, which is his entitlement, and then secondly through the accountability mechanisms which are there. But I'm not here to blame the PSNI for the problems within the political institutions. The problems within the political institutions are the responsibility of those of us who have a mandate in those institutions, and it's up to yourselves to make a judgment on who's using their mandate wisely and who's using it in a reckless way.
The RA is gone. The RA have stood down. They've put their arms beyond use. They have left the stage. They're away and they're not coming back. So there is no current status of the IRA. There is no current IRA members. The IRA has gone. And I know that differs from the Chief Constable's view, but I will deal with that if I'm asked that.
Bobby, you mentioned the timing of this arrest. You said there was no basis of evidence, but you also raised the timing of the arrest. Do you believe that the timing of that arrest was deliberately timed to play into the politics and to play into the politics? Is that what you're suggesting when you talk about time? Well,
I have grave concerns about the arrest, and I have grave concerns about the timing of the arrest. Those concerns are the very reason that the party leadership have asked to see the Chief Constable to raise the concerns with them. So for what the reason was and what the timing was, we have a lot of questions about that, and we will go to the Chief Constable for answers.
But do you think specifically on that timing issue, is it your belief, your suspicion, that it was timed to play into those talks on the early morning, the second day of the talks last week? Is that what you think?
I have a grave concern about the timing of my arrest on the morning of the talks, subsequently being told that unionist politicians were briefing the media before my arrest, and I have grave concerns about how murder on our streets gets into the political process and becomes a matter for unionist infighting and strategical battle.
Mr. Adams, touching on what Bobby said in regard to unionist briefings, when Peter Robinson issued his resignation threat on Wednesday, he appeared to suggest that he'd been given advance warning that these arrests were imminent. Is that a matter of concern to you?
Yes, and Bobby's just noted that.
In terms of, do you think there's a line of communications that...
Well, you see, look, we have a job of work to do. It's a very challenging job of work. And the reason why we're taking a very measured response to all of these issues isn't that we're not going to raise these issues. We are. We're going to raise them robustly, and we're going to raise them in a very forensic and in a very sustained way. But there are a lot of people out there who are dependent on these political institutions to work. And our job is to get them to work. So that's our responsibility. As I said in my opening remark, the issues in relation to policing we will raise, if you like, in that stream which has got to do with policing. The issues which have got to do with the mandate that all of us have been given and which the people of this island voted for is our function, led by Martin McGuinness and our primary focus. So we don't want to say anything which will play into the hands of the wreckers. At the same time, I'm very conscious that Republicans and Nationalists watching this, and Unionists watching this who want it to work, may expect us to be more aggressive or assertive or frank around the calamity that has been contrived. But as I said before, our job is to try and steer a course and to use whatever wisdom we have, whatever experience we have, in a wise way. But we have no doubt that we will raise all of these matters in a forensic and consistent and very, very robust way.
Just on the Chief Constable's assessment, and also the Garda sort of commissioner, the two governments all agree that that the IRA has stood down its military structures, that they're not active, that particular assessment is an assessment that I agree with. Where I differ from the Chief Constable is that there's no role for the IRA. The IRA's finished, the IRA's gone. And where I think that the Chief Constable and other perspectives out there see this in terms of like the IRA being the caterpillar that's still there, where I think it's moved on, it's become a butterfly, it's flew away, it's gone, it's disappeared, and they need to evolve to that as well. Need to move on till a different level of where this has got to. Not only is there no IRA, there's no logic for an IRA. The primary Republican organisation and the primary Republican morality, credibility and representativeness is in the Sinn Féin, the Sinn Féin party.
Let me say this. A lot of you people are around a very, very long time, as we have been around a very, very long time. And the more I consider and the more I think about how all this began, the murders of two people, and our hearts absolutely go out to the family, Jack Davison and Kevin McGuinness. You need to be stupid, folks, not to be asking the question, whose agenda is best served by those murders? It certainly wasn't our agenda. It wasn't Sinn Féin's agenda. It wasn't the Sinn Féin's peace strategy agenda. And in my opinion, it wasn't Peter Robinson's agenda either. This is something that has caused huge problems for us within the political institutions. And many of us at this table have been working for, well over 20 years to build this peace process. We couldn't have done it without people like Bobby Storey and others in different parts of the north. So I think serious questions have to be asked about whose agenda was served by those murders. Particularly as we all know, that the prospect that agents were involved, people who are hostile to the peace process, who are hostile to Sinn Féin's involvement in the political institutions. And every now and again I see television programmes where they wheel out all sorts of discredited, former, as they're called, ex-Republicans, to say this, that and the other about what Republicans who are mainstream are doing to build peace. And the media love these characters. They absolutely love them. Some of them are headbangers. Some of them are just so full of bitterness and hatred for all of the changes that we have brought about in our society. And, at a time whenever people run around purporting to know this, or purporting to know that, all of that plays on very, very negatively to the work that we have been involved in trying to move this process forward. So what happened with those two murders created problems for us. It also created problems for Peter Robinson, in my view. And I know that, I know Gerry Moriarty, who's here with us today, has written about this in the course of the last while, as if as if it wasn't really a big dynamic in the situation, the way Mike Nesbitt handled his contribution to it. It was a huge dynamic in terms of how that put the DUP under pressure to do what they did do in the course of this week. And you need to be a fool not to recognise or understand that. So the roots of this are two murders, and the people who are responsible for those murders are either criminals, agents, dissidents. They are certainly not supporters of ours, and we do take umbrage and exception to anybody claiming that we would have any association after all that we've been through over 20 years and some of the very difficult decisions that we have taken to get buy-in from our community for the new political dispensation. So I think some people in the media need to wake up and smell the coffee in relation to our agenda. Our agenda is for peace, our agenda is for progress, and our agenda is for facing up to the very difficult issues that the executive has to deal with in terms, for example, of how we do defend the poorest, most marginalised, vulnerable, disadvantaged and disabled people within our society, i.e. how do we get the Stormont House Agreement implemented. And we're going into the talks in the course of the next short while to get that done. We're also going into the talks appealing to all our party leaders in the talks to stand with us as I have stood with them against violence, against dissidents, against loyalist extremism and against criminals. And I think our track record, my track record in that executive is second to no other minister in the executive. So I think everybody needs to give themselves a shake, and I will be very surprised if there aren't people within the leadership of unionism who disagree with my agenda, that there's a very real prospect that the people who murdered Jock Davison and Kevin McGuigan had their own agenda, and it was an anti-Sinn Féin agenda, it was an anti-institutions agenda, and it was clearly something that has put at least some within the unionism at a huge disadvantage at this time. But the way to deal with it, folks, is not to lie down under it. The way to deal with it is for all of us to show leadership, go into the talks, get a resolution, and continue to stand together against criminality and violence.
Do I have confidence in the Chief Constable? Obviously, because of the last week and everything that's happened, there are there are clear questions that we need to be putting to the Chief Constable. There's grave concerns that I have, that my family and friends have, and that Republicans in general have around the whole charade of the last week. So I want to, with the party or on my behalf, hear what the Chief Constable has got to say about all of that. But in broad terms, that's where my thinking is around the Chief Constable.
Would you intend to do that? When the leadership?
That's a party leadership decision.
But would you want to be there? Is what I'm asking. Yes.
I would want to do what the party leadership would want me to do.
And Bobby's also touched upon a very, very important matter there, and when he says his own family, his friends, and the Republican community. So I want to appeal to all of the citizens out there, all of them, no matter what party they support. And I want to appeal particularly to the electorate which we have, to be patient about this, to support what we're trying to do, and to demand in whatever way they can that the politicians up on the Hill do what we are well paid to do. And also those throughout the island of Ireland, because this is an all-island agreement, that we ensure that our government in Dublin does its job as co-equal guarantor. And people should not feel that they're spectators to all of this. This affects everybody's life. This is about forging ahead for the future, or as Mark McGuinness has said, handing it over to those who have an agenda which is anti the institutions and anti the peace process.